Greetings and welcome to this all new episode of Let's Create Something with Trapcode Tao. And today we're gonna create this kind of a chaotic cubes tunnel, and it's kind of a cool technique to do that, to make it ensure that it loops and that it's not too fast, and that it takes a minimal amount of frames. So let's start on by going right in After Effects, and let's create a new composition, and let's call it cubes tunnel. I'm gonna make this one 180 by 180 because it's practical to export animated GIFs, but you can expand on that to make any other kind of dimensions you need. So let's create a new solid, Control Y, let's call it Tau, and let's add the Tau effect right onto that, like so. And let's start by trying to do it with the default circle. So how would we do that? Let's first try to make this, instead of extrude n-gons, let's make separate geometric shapes with it. So let's reduce the amount of segments. This is what we have. We want to have cubes, so let's make it 4 sides, and let's remove the chamfer. So it's gonna remove kind of bevel we have, and let's set them to be not oriented to the path, so they all look at the same directions. So we kind of have some cubes there. Let's add a camera, so Control Alt Shift C, and let's make it 50 millimeters, so the default settings for an After Effects camera. And let's hit Control Shift Alt Y to create a new null, and let's make it 3D. So we're gonna attach our camera to that. We can make it pink and call it dolly, just to make sure that this is our little camera rig here, and we can rotate around. So as we can notice here, they are not necessarily cubes, so let's fix that right away. So we can alter the size Z right in the segment sections here, and let's try to make them as cubic as possible, so something around 71 or 72, something like that. Let's set this back to 0. So this is the amount of cubes that we have. First, let's make our ring. Let's make a ring that we're gonna repeat around to make some kind of a donut. So let's add more segments to that, and let's randomize their size. So let's do that with this randomness feature here, and let's mess around with that so we get them to be a different size here. And let's make them smaller perhaps. So let's do that, and let's make more of them. So not too much, so they are but let's just make sure that we don't have too much of any gaps in there. So something like that should be pretty fine. And let's repeat that around a tube. So how would we go about and do that? Let's open up our repeat path section here, this little twirly here, and let's open up the first repeater, and let's set the R1 world position X to 0. So by default it's set at 100. We want to set this back to 0, and let's uncheck the symmetric doubler, so we don't want to use that for the moment. And let's start by adding 1 at first, and let's look at what we want to have it do. So what we want is to rotate it this kind of way, but we want our pivot point to be not the center of our shape here, but the edge. So let's move this Z. In fact, let's not move this at all. Let's move the shape from the path generator. So we want to move that. We can move it right to the half of this number, I think. So 540 divided by 2. Will that make it in the center, or I'm saying random stuff? So let's try to pinpoint the right around where the center should be, and it doesn't need to be right the center, right? You can have a donut, must have a hole in the middle anyway. So let's start by pulling off with our camera so we can see more of it. And let's see what would this do if we repeat more shapes in there. So it'll kind of go around, and it'll kind of make some kind of a, it'll end up making some kind of a donut, right? So that's exactly what we want to do. And how do we get the correct amount of repetition? Let's start by doing a whole thing. So we want to have them like as close as that, something like that. We don't have that many gaps in there. So we have a rotation of 3 degrees. So if we want to figure out the correct amount of repetition, simply type down 360 divided by 3, the amount of degrees that we have here, and it should make us a whole circle. But we can subtract 1 to that because we already have our first existing one. Let's rotate this dolly 90 degrees so we can see our kind of a donut made out of cubes from the top. And let's pull back a little. So let me get back to the repetition here, and we have 119 copies of our ring here. So it's kind of going all the way around, and it's ending up making some kind of a full circle here. And if we have 118, we have still one more to have here to fill up our thing, and that's why I just subtracted 1, because if we have it 0, we have 1. So 0 is 1, and that means that in total we have 119 pieces. So that's cool. We have a donut here, and we want to get a little bit more chaos in there. And what we also want to do is set our camera to be kind of I know that you can't actually see me pointing at the screen, but I'm pointing right around here, and we want to be right around this part of the tube here inside our donut. So any way is good of doing that. Let's move our dolly right here to the 0 here, so we get right in the middle, kind of in the middle of our tube here. And let's hit C to cycle between the different camera tools, and let's get this pan camera here so we can move right in there. So let's pass on the top here, and now we're right in it. So we're looking at the floor of it now. So let's rotate it. Our dolly was rotated 90 degrees. So let's rotate it back to 0. So we're going back here to 0 degrees. Let me just remove the guides here. Title action. And we're kind of looking inside our tunnel here. That is kind of the inside of our donut here. But let me just undo that. But we're kind of seeing. Let's pull back a little so we get. See, we're going right in there, and we're having this kind of an angle here, and we can move it a little bit onto the side here to get it more kind of centered. Something like that should look pretty fine. But if we want to get more dramatic perspective effect, let's hit Control Shift Y right on our camera here, and let's change the preset here to get something more of a wide angle. So 35 millimeters. Right away we can see it change the perspective a little. So let's get something, and we can change it here. So let's get something that looks kind of interesting. And now that we've changed it, we're gonna face some little issues here. I'm going right through the wall here, but that's no real issue. We just have to kind of rotate this a little bit and move forward, perhaps get some kind of an other angle there. This seems kind of right to me. So this is the first step, and we're using the automatically path generator, which is something that we don't usually do, but I would suggest that you use a light if you want to have more control, right? We're doing it with this, but we can always do it with the lights, and we have even more options doing so. So let's first do it simple with that. What else can we do here to add more randomness in there? Because right now our pattern here, what we're doing to the random scale, and we can also randomize their position a little bit to have it a little bit more of an offset on this. But what we really would want to do is have this checked in, and oh yeah, that's cool. So, but we do want this result, but we don't want this option to be checked in, because this means that every repetition will have a different seed of this for the randomization. But we do want to keep some kind of control over that. So we're gonna do it a different way that I found out recently, that we can easily have an offset and to create some kind of a chaos in something that we repeat. So using that randomness and still being able to make it loop. So let's see how we're gonna do that. So let's go in the offset here, and we're not gonna animate anything here. We're gonna just set something. So let's uncheck the offset size. We don't need that now. And let's see here, and let's get back in the repeat path section here under the first repeater where we had our repetitions going on here, and we can offset the path here. So if we move this right, that doesn't do anything. Let's leave it to 4, and let's just check the offset position setting here. So nothing more than that. So what we've done now is something cool, because we kind of have a pattern here, but we have chaos at the same time. And it's just that it's offsetting the way we're randomizing the position. So imagine our ring, our initial ring, each time it gets repeated, it's kind of getting rotated to some offset of the, not getting rotated, but it's like the randomization of its segments is getting offset by the amount that we put down here, so we can have some control over that. But we just need to put it on 4 here, and I think that we would need to get this offset like checked in if we want this to loop. But beware now that we've doing this way down, we're gonna have more trouble using the offset to animate this. Again, we can have some pretty cool result with that, but it's gonna make it more complex to loop it using the usual techniques with that. But it doesn't mean that we don't have any control, and it doesn't mean that we don't have more possibilities anyhow. So let's do it. Let's animate our loop in there. So we don't need to do much more than animate the world transform rotation on the Y. So we're inside the donut. Our donut is still like aligned to the center of our scene. So the center of our donut is still 0, 0 in our scene. We just moved the camera in there. So that means that we can still rotate this thing, and we're fixed in our camera, and we're looking at it like from inside. So as long as we rotate this 360 degree, we're gonna be right back at our starting position. So we're gonna have a seamless loop. Let me demonstrate that. Let's create a keyframe on frame 0 at 0 here, and let's go to frame 90, because that's not that many frames. It's pretty workable to output animated GIFs with reduced file size constraint and all this stuff when you post loops on social media that you want to think about. So exporting 360 frames will make it hard for us to optimize it and have it small enough of a file size that we can actually post it on Twitter and Tumblr and all these social media websites. So we want to keep it a small amount of frames. So 90 frames is a good number to work with. And let's have it rotate 360 degrees. So that will make a full rotation. Let's make ourselves quick markers here. So Shift 3 here. We're at frame 90, and I'm hitting home here to get back at frame 0. I'm gonna hit Shift 1. So now we can hit 1 and 3 to get from the first to the last frame, and from the last frame. So after hitting 3, we're gonna hit page up on the keyboard to come to the frame just prior to that, and we're gonna hit N to close our work area here. So we have our looping animation here that is going to work for us. But right now it's going pretty fast, and it's something that we perhaps that we wanted to go this fast, but perhaps that we would want it to be slower than that. And one easy way to do that would simply be to, if you don't have to worry about anything like file size and stuff like that, or render time, we can just extend the amount of keyframes that our loop will take. So if we render that once again, and it will still loop, and let me just, I won't RAM preview it all the way, but now that we've done that, it goes slower. But what if we want just to output 90 frames, but we still want it to go slower? Well, we kind of can trick it mathematically, and it's not that hard. I'm not good at math, so I'm just getting able to get around this, so I'm sure you can pretty easily figure this out. So let's do it together. Instead of repeating this thing 119 times, we're gonna repeat it a quarter of that. So we're gonna then use the second repeater to repeat the quarter of our donut around. So now we just need to rotate 90 degrees, and what we're gonna be looking at will be what we started with. It's kind of complicated, but let's do it. So first, let's go right here where it's 119 on our first repeater, and let's hit front slash, so a division, and let's divide that by 4. So we have 30. So what we have now is something that looks like that, and let's just quickly look around with the camera. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees here, and I'm just going to pull back so we can look at what we have. So we have half of donut. Oh, that means that I've had too much of oh, the symmetric doubler was on, so we need this to be off. So right now we have some kind of a quarter of a donut, and we're gonna go right in the second repeater, and we're gonna uncheck the symmetric doubler, and we're gonna set the world position Y to 0, and we're gonna set the repetition. Now we know the exact amount we want. We want, how many more we want than that? 3 more. We don't want to have repeated 4 times because our first one is already there, it exists. So we want to copy this 3 more times. So let's add 3 there, and each step that we're copying it, we want it to rotate 90 degree on the Y. So let's hit 90 here. Let's set the world rotate Y to 90, and there we're back to our donut. So now that we've figured it out from this angle, I'm just gonna undo to get back at what we had here, and I'm gonna get back in here and make sure that this is unchecked and this is unchecked as well. So we have our quarter of donut here, and we are gonna copy that 3 times to the amount of not 100 on the position X, but we're gonna rotate it 90 degree on the Y. So we're back at something that looks like our initial tunnel here, but there will be a pattern here, but we're not really gonna see it because we're from the angle that we have, we don't see much more than the quarter of our donut actually. So we don't see the rest while it's rotating. So instead of rotating it 360 degrees now, we just need 90 degrees angle, and we can refresh, Control Alt front slash to purge as much as we want. We'll get the last frame as identical as the first one as it can get. So now we have our motion in between there, and it's looping. Fantastic. How cool is that? Magic loop. Magic loop. Simply magic loop. So now as perhaps we want this to be going in the other direction. Pretty easy to do that. Just select both our keyframes here and right click here, keyframe assistant time reverse, and that'll make sure that we actually move forward in our tunnel. And now that we repeat it a different amount of times, that means our offset will kind of be messed up here, so we can actually find a number that's more suitable here, so something like 8 maybe. And as long as we've set everything right in there, it's gonna work for our loop here. So we're just rotating 90 degrees on this amount of frame, 90, and we have quite some chaos going on here. It's not like the most ordered way of setting cues that I've seen. Like if we really want them to be ordered, we just need to shut down every values here in the randomization, and now they'll look a little bit more ordered. And we have so many possibilities here, so many possibilities. I mean, I've just undo that now, but let's not the like if we randomize the rotation, I don't think it's that great. It kind of looks cool when they're all facing the same direction, but that's something else that we can do as well. And even the scale, they're set up here to be separate, so we can have some of them really thin and tall, and like even mess up their randomization on the scale and all, and that'll work perfectly with our loop system here, and it's gonna be fine, and it's always gonna match the first and the last frame. So that's cool, as long as we don't check in this. So this is getting even more chaos in there, but too much chaos. If we go to last frame and first frame, it's gonna be totally different, because this means that each seed will be changed when it gets repeated. We don't want the seeds to be changed when it gets repeated, and it's simply because of the path offset. I mean, let's set that to 0, and it's not chaotic at all. It's the repetition, like not offset. It's kind of another cool way to look at it. I mean, but this, it's organized chaos. It's chaotic, but it's chaotic in some way that we decided that, and that we set up, and on which we have control over, and we can make it loop in such a small amount of frames and post it on Twitter that allow us only 3 megs per GIFs. That's cool. That's awesome. So that's the first thing, and you can stop right here if you can understand principle, I think, from there. But let's continue on, and let's make it look quite a little bit better. So right now, and first prior to doing that, let's see what more we can get of using a light, because now we're using the path generator. If we shut this down, it's all off. Let's try to see if we can get the kind of exact of the same result, but without the path generator, so we can then unlock the options from the light. So let's create a new light, Control Shift Alt L, and we're gonna make sure that its name is Tao, all in caps, and you can set the cone angle to 0. It's a little annoying in the viewport sometimes. So now we have a light, and by default it's creating this kind of shape. Let's shut down our path generator so we can see only that, and by default, well, it's just getting repeated around our circle here, and let's set this right at the center, so 540, 540, and 0. And let's actually add our radius, our circle code here on our light. So let's do that, and we'll have something like that. First, let's set that to 0, 0, and 0. So right there, it's on top. Now we want to right click and make sure that its auto orientation is set to off, so all our cubes are facing the same direction. And right there we're kind of getting but it's not at the right position. So let's create a new null, and let's make it 3D, and let's pick up this and paste and cut it from there. So Control X, and let's attach our Tao light there, and let's add the code onto our null instead. So there we get back at exactly what we had prior, and let's add even one step more than that, because we're gonna have more control if we do it this way. So let's duplicate this null, Control D. We have another one here, and let's attach this to that, and let's have this one do the circle, and let's quickly tap on this, make sure that it's completely white there, and what we simply need to do now is change the position of that, but not this one because it's bound. Then we're gonna create another one yet, and it's not completely necessary, but doing that, you see this one doesn't have the circle code here, and it's going to stick to the center from this. So if it's attached to a null that is centered, it's gonna be at the center position. So let's color code that so we're sure that it's the same group here. So something that we can figure out. Yellow maybe there. And let's grab our last one here. So we can call this one settings if we have some to add here, and let's call this one Tao scale, and this one Tao rotate. So this is our little hierarchy here, and we can move this back to 0 and just set it like approximately to the right position, and there we have our tunnel back in there. So let's compare. Now we can shut it off from here. Let's uncheck that, and let's open up this. So this is what we had. So minus 97 here. Let's try that. Minus 97, and then we just gotta figure out the right angle. So let's open both at the same time. Oh, it's filling everything up. So let's deactivate this one. There, we got it. And is it looping? Yes, it is. So this is how we quickly adapt something that we've created previously with the automatically generated path. If we figure out that we need some more control for any good reason for that, like for example, if you need to have some hard-coded properties typed in the light, then we'll be able to access that, and we'll be able to add even more randomness easily. Right, that's pretty cool. So let's light this up pretty simply, pretty easily. We're gonna add an ambient light. So Control Shift Alt L. Let's call this amb, and let's make it an ambient light, and let's hit OK. And now it should start on my side to make these kind of an errors, but I don't think that if you had the last After Effects version, you shouldn't have any trouble with that. It's just me that's working with an old computer and an old software, but no worries, it works. Let's open up, let's create a new light. So Control Alt Shift L, and let's make this one a point light, and let's call it Tao Lumi. So let's hit OK. And right in there, I'm gonna get this error there, but simply fix that by reducing the amount of segments there temporarily. Not too much. And can I cut back the quality there down to something like 2? So it shouldn't crash like that. So we have our light here, and let's activate it. So I'm gonna make sure that it recognizes it as this super cool, awesome light that is 10 times better than official After Effects light for Tao. So let's go there in the let's close everything down, and right in the material and lighting, and include Tao Lumi lights, the second option to check here. We want to check this in, and there we have this super cool light affecting our cubes. And perhaps we want to get into material lighting and reduce the ambient a little bit while we're placing our light. So now our light should be let's put it right at the center, so we know that it's where it's starting. So right now it's approximately here, right in the middle of our donut here, and let's bring it towards the inside. So let's bring it right here until it gets right here. So now it's standing halfway. We want to pull it back. We want to bring it like more around the back here to get a super dramatic, cool light effect as if it's coming from here. So right, this, these, and let's change the intensity so it gets a little bit more blown off, or let's increase the radius there so we get more light popping from back there, and perhaps now we can reduce the intensity or raise it depending on the effect you're looking for. Let's hit Shift P so we can keep that while we can still see our numbers for the position. So I'm going to bring it back here so we get some nice backlight from here. So that's pretty neat, I would say. And still you can go here and change the specular, the shininess, and sometimes it crashes when you go to 0 with this one, but let's try to see if we set this down to 3, and perhaps we can get a little more bright glowing effect doing that, and darken it afterwards like such. And I don't think it's that much of a good idea to add an environment on this, because it's a tunnel, and the way it's going to reflect, it's not going to look exactly fine. But yet again, you can always use this in combination with great lighting to get a little bit more detail in for the reflection here. But be careful, it might look kind of out of place because this should reflect itself. It shouldn't reflect some kind of weird out of place environment like graffiti ruins or a green forest. But yet again, it's all there for you to play around with. There is no true answer. And let me show you one other thing that's pretty cool that we can do with our setup here. Now we have our light, so we can color our cubes with our light. That's one thing that we couldn't do. We couldn't keyframe that with the automatically generated paths. That's why I wanted, one of the reasons why I wanted to do that. So let's go ahead and our color here. Let's so we have the geometry we're creating is by default using 300 frames. And does this matter in any sort of fashion? Yes, it kind of will, because we're working in the quarter of that, because we're repeating our thing 4 times. So let's 300 divided by 4 is what? Am I not very good at math? So it's something like 75. So let's go to frame 75, and let's punch in a new color. So let's bring this back at the beginning, and let's set it, right click on it to set it to hold keyframe, and right here we're gonna change this to let's say orange, and we're gonna go to double that, so 150, and let's punch in another keyframe, and we're gonna set this back to white. So initial color there, and we're gonna alt click on the keyframe here, and we're gonna click on the little button with the arrow here, and under properties we're gonna set that to loop out type cycle this. So this option there is gonna repeat that. So with all the math and everything, the way we've set up our thing that it repeats 4 times, it's gonna allow us to have some sort of a pattern in here, alternating between the colors with our cubes. Still some kind of like you see this, it's making some kind of stripes there because the way we've offsetting it, so it's always gonna work with our seamless loop thing as well. So that's pretty cool, and we're gonna be able to mess around with the pattern that it makes and the pattern of overall everything, and by going back in the repeat path in the offset. So if we change this like to 6, we're gonna have plenty of different nice and cool different patterns to mess around with. And once again, like this is one way to repeat that on the keyframes, and it works like with the numbers that we've punched in. But if we keep it down to something that loops in this, like for example 10, do we need it to be with 75? Let's try that. So I'm holding Alt and I'm bringing all this there, and the last keyframe here is on frame 10, so it's still set to be looping, and I'm gonna hit Control Alt front slash to refresh it. So now it's even more chaos because it's alternating for each cube that is being created there, and it's gonna still function pretty well with the loop, anything that we mess around with. So pretty nice stuff here, pretty interesting setup that we can have just there, and play around with different settings and get different kind of results in there. But always keep it in mind that beware, because if we want to do like we would usually do, for example, like oh, I want to offset their position, so I'm gonna offset this, and I'm gonna set a keyframe here, and I'm gonna set that to the frame 90. I'm gonna put it to 100, and let's test that out. And what this is gonna do is gonna be completely hectic, because it's gonna like offset everything. Is gonna, perhaps if you show this to some person who is like prone to epilepsy, is gonna have some kind of a crisis there. But now we can't really do that, and we need the loop offset to be activated, I think, because if it's not, like, it's not gonna work. So let's shut this down. I mean, let's undo that and let's keep the rotation. So as long as we have this checked in, it works. But that means that we can also use the trick that we sometimes can do, which is like we have 38 segments, so we would be able to add one here and then just do on the offset, where is it, the offset, like make it 38 divided by 100, or the other way around, or 100 divided by 38, and then it won't really be looping. So we're gonna keep it off with the offset. Actually, we're gonna just keep it down. But if we really do wanna mess around with the randomization, now if you have enough, you can stop here, and the next part is gonna be even more advanced. So we're gonna mess up with expression a little bit more, and let's see how we can animate the motion of each cube and have some kind of interesting setup in which we're gonna be able to actually have it loop. So let's see, now that we have this in place, we can go in the offset section, and in the offset animation sequence, now we have plenty of options here, and Dan Ebert's looping thing will help us there, because we can loop it for a quarter of 10 seconds, and it should make the quarter of our thing. It should work. So let's actually try that. But for this, then we need the offset to be animated, so we'll need the position to be set to off. So let's see how we can yet randomize that again, but a different way while the offset is working. So let's animate our offset. Let's set that there to 0, and let's set it on 100 to on the frame 90. So this is going to be like our looping rotating thing there, and because we're still having the camera motion to it, I mean the world rotation, we can actually set it off for this the moment we're doing that, and so nothing is moving now. So let's have it like, okay, let's have it like that, and let's go ahead and let's get in here and get to Dan Ebert's wiggle there, the one that we always like to use. And I thank you very much, Mr. Dan Ebert, for putting that available for us. And we're gonna simply go right to the size here, and we're gonna all click on the stopwatch, and we're gonna paste the Dan Ebert wiggle thing. And the, let's see here, the loop time, let's set that to 10. So let's see what we have here. Let's go to frame 3, frame 1. It's the same, but we have a wiggle going on. So right on with that. If we test it out, we have something like wiggling like that. So that is something. And we can always get an idea. So what we would really want to have as a result, so we can actually like click on that. So we're looking for getting back to something more like this with the animation in it, but doing this will prevent our loop from working if we want to rotate it only 90 frames. So let's get back at this. And let's activate the size from radius there. And now we still have the Dan Ebert loop here. We're gonna get it from here. We're gonna copy it, Control C, and let's get onto our Tao light. Double tap on A quickly to open up the options, and we're gonna alt click on the stopwatch for the radius, and we're gonna paste that. So now we should get some more randomization over on the radius. Does not give us more random aspect of this. So let's change the frequency. So this frequency for the radius, instead of 1, let's try 30. And it's always gonna be repeated, isn't it? It's not offsetting anymore, or is it? Let's see. I'm gonna make it 300 on the frequency there, and everything is getting all crazy there. Let's shut this off for a moment. So this makes it do that, and this makes it do that even more, but it should make it, I mean, do we still have an offset here in the repetition? So that, oh yeah, because we don't have the, so is that something that we can do? No. And is that something that we can do? No, not at all. So how would we offset that? It's kind of tricky because we need the position to be on. I thought I would have no real problem in showing you that, but now if we check that in, it's gonna go all crazy, of course, because it's offsetting those around. But the size is not checked in. So let's check the size in. So now we get something like that, and it's gonna be all crazy. But do we need it to loop? No, we don't need it to loop anymore. I'm talking to myself more than I'm showing you, because I'm trying to remember now how I did it exactly. Can we offset that as well? No, we shouldn't mess around with that. It'll break the loop. So there we have 38 segments. and it's not looping, so I think we need to have this if we want to keep it easier on the loop. And then we can simply change also add a wiggle to the position of this, like it doesn't have any. So we can add Dan Eberts here on the light directly. And it should do something like such, but we need it more on the frequency and less on the amplitude. So let's try like that. Something like that. With an amplitude of 21. Make it a little bit more randomized in there. And let's see. We need perhaps more of those now. So more segments. Something like that. And let's make them smaller. And now let's just play this back before it gets too heavy for playback. And it's kind of going pretty fast. But once again, it's something is gonna loop. Wait a minute, is there something? Let's try to reduce like the craziness of the fastness of all that, like not the general movement in our tunnel here. And let's see. This is getting them too big. And we could have more. Now our color pattern will be kind of affected in this way of doing it, because I mean this is gonna be stripes, because we can't offset our stuff anymore, because we can't have the position checked, or else it's going too fast. So let's like the position, let's reduce the loop time. So if we can put 2.5, is it going to work? 1, 3, it should work, because it's 10 divided by 4, and we've divided our thing by 4. So in principle, I don't even know if what I say is right, but it should make it should make it faster. It's exactly opposite of what I wanted. But let's first let's shut down our rotation, so we only get this moving. Like, oh, it's getting very fast. Let's try to put 10 here, and let's test it out again. It's going fast because it's the frequency. So let's try the frequency at 30. And it's still pretty fast, eh? Let's see at 3. So for the best, it's still some kind of fast, eh? Let's try 0.3, and let's see how it moves. Still like crazy. What else do we have on? So let's shut that position off. So the size now. Yeah, it's off, so it shouldn't be on here. Is it because it's there? Yeah, okay. So let's try this back. Let's try this back with only the okay, so this we need to reduce its speed 0.2. Let's try that. No, that's kind of more like it. And can we reduce that to 2.5? And perhaps it does make sense, perhaps it doesn't make any sense, but the only way to be sure is to test it. So we can actually get some kind of a slower movement and still have it on the loop there. Let's bring back our moving motion here. So I'm just setting back the keyframes here on the rotate Y. So we have our motion here, and as soon as we activate this, now it's really gonna go crazy hell fast. Is it? Is that how it decided to be with us? Yeah, it's that. It's exactly like that. So that's our radius, light radius. Where is the light radius? It's there, and its frequency is set to 300. So let's do 3. And let's actually change the seed random there. So simply a lazy way so we can see another result without having this piece where we have it right now. Oh, seed random with a capital R. And there we're kind of getting more closely to something that moves and that loops. And sorry for all the messing around, but it's just at the same time to demonstrate you that nothing comes easy. I mean, yeah, it sometimes comes easy, but there's never hurts to try couple different ways to do something, and then after that, then you're kind of on top of your knowledge to decide and to make your decision. Am I going to go towards this way of laying it out so I can animating using this technique, or am I going to instead use this way to build it, and so I'll animate it with those settings, and it's still pretty fast. Let's reduce that to 0.3, and now we have less random there. Can we reduce that to 2.5? And it's even less randomness in there. So we have a loop. Let's increase the amount of amplitude. So that's, again, patterns are cool. Sometimes it's exactly what you need is some kind of a cool pattern, but any number that we'll put down here, any kind of chaos that we'll make, and even if we have a bad frame like we have now, we'll always be sure that it loops perfectly, that our first frame is exactly in tune with the last one, and it's gonna be totally great. Sometimes what you need to do is, like right now, we're kind of getting some result that we're near to, that we might want to just reduce the size or just tinker with some setting somewhere that you see there, just made it a little bit more nicer there. So that's kind of some kind of a pattern that I feel would be nice to output an animation out of. I don't know, it's something, it moves around. I don't know if we could actually get it to be even less crazy than that, because I still think it's moving quite fast there. But once again, now I'm showing you the tricks to have it done with smallest amount of frames. But remember, if you really do need this to be slow, and you don't necessarily need to have a small amount of frames, then don't be afraid to expand everything and making sure that, well, you get more of the speed or the pacing that you want for your elements that are moving in your scene. So that's about all I had to speak about today and to show you, but I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that it was not too confusing, but just think about how you can use different techniques with Trapcode Tao in order to to achieve your goals, and sometimes trying all the different things that you can think of, and then standing on top of that and looking at several renders that you did and being able to take a good decision out of that on how you'll go forward next is what you need to do. Or sometimes it's just you need to experiment something, and great things will always come out of that. So all right, I've just listened to this, and I realized there's a few things that I might have missed or not went around to explain. So let's get to it. So first, it's hit U to reveal all, and I think that I'm gonna get to a better way here. Right there where we have on the null, that is our rotate null here. The angle time 200. Let's set that to 36 instead of 200, and let's see what we get now. We should get a little bit less motion on the position thing if it's checked in. So let's get back to the offset and the position. Oh, that's crazy. And let's see here. So our light here, let's we got the position cancel. Let's get here in the segments, and let's shut down the randomness on all this so we can get a better idea. So there, shut this off, shut this off, shut this off, and there we get this kind of result. And let's save it and test. Let's test that, and it's still moving pretty fast, we can say, but it's less of a problem than earlier because we were having our emitter spin a little bit more than just only one whole circle. So that's one thing. And then let's be a little bit less crazy about those random here, and let's see there. If we get the offset here instead of 100 in the end, we can set that to 25, and it will not work. So let's shut a few things off. Let's shut the size. Alright, so let's shut the size, and let's see what we got here. So it doesn't loop. Let's see what we've got other than that. Let's shut off all the randomness everywhere. So that's what we get, some kind of another kind of tunnel. And let's get the amount of segments to an odd rather than an even number. And so aside from the color, our pieces are at the same place, but our color changes now. So let's get rid of the color for the moment so we can make sure that our thing is working fine. So let me just refresh that. So we have it only white there. And let's see what's going off. So it seems that it works at 25. Now everything's shut off. We're gonna open it up, open it back up again. So let's see here in our repetition where we have right in the repeat pat. We have 29 point something. Let's try to put 29 straight, and it should work a little bit better. So the position is activated now, and the offset is going to 25 instead of going to a full 100, because here it's at 2.5. So this should work. We kind of have some weird gap on our donut parts here, but that might be because we need to find the appropriate amount of segments, but whatever, it should loop at 90 frames. And then let's add some randomness a different way. Let's get in the offset, in the offset animation sequence. Let's bring this back up. So this will work once again because it's set to loop at 2.5. So this is kind of, it's going to be pulsating. Oh, sorry there. And let's try to put a bigger number here so we can see it better. Let's try to put a higher frequency. Okay. This other pattern here. Let's decrease that. Okay, let's increase that to 130. So there is some kind of pattern that we also can have. So that's pretty cool. Now I'm just messing around, but let's see. Should have got rid of the color. Let's try it again. So let's go here and let's make a loop that ends by 5 only. So let's start by making it the whole 75 per se, or 76, or let's say 100. Just arbitrarily for the moment, so we can have something that we can put in the middle there. And let's make this one some kind of an orange. Set those to hold keyframe, and then let's get to frame number 5, and let's, by holding Alt here, let's force the last frame here on frame number 5, and then we can check that, and we'll get a pattern that should loop now, as long as it's a multiple of 75, which is a quarter of 10, and a quarter of 300, which is 10 seconds. Anyway, that is some kind of cool stuff going on here. And let's see, once again, we can still put that at 10. That's the size of it, and then it'll go all around, but it'll gonna be a little bit faster. But now that we've reduced the thing, it'll work fine and make something pretty hypnotic. And let's try to bring this over to the world position X and world position Y. So let's try to paste that in here, paste that in there, and we should get a lot of randomness in there. So let's reduce amplitude of that, and there we get some kind of slow but some weird kind of randomness of a movement that's not too hectic, and that's gonna loop on 90 frames. But still pretty more to play with. Let's try a smaller number there. Oh, that's on this size. I didn't mean that. So yeah, why not on this size? And let's try smaller numbers here and there, and then increase the amplitude, so 200. Oh, whoops. So that's weird. And will that loop? No, it won't. And why won't it loop? Because the loop time's gotta be 2.5. 2.5. That's not interesting anymore, and it won't loop either. So I don't know what I'm talking about anymore, but plenty more stuff to try. And why doesn't it work properly? Because we're going to, yeah, because we're going to 25, so. So yeah, this has got to be it. 2.5. And that works now. So let's add this randomization back in. Make it more frequent, so 1, 1, and still that's some kind of a nice pattern. Let's see what movement that it'll give us. Oh, that's pretty interesting. Let's try it a little bit less. 20, so 20 here, and 45 there. And let's copy that once more. I think we can make it on the separate Y and Z and X. Try something like that. I'm not sure if it's gonna turn out okay. Be too much stuff to calculate now. So I'm gonna try to reduce that. And let's see. It's kind of going wild all around the place, and it's pretty fast, but once again, something to experiment with, because now we do get this certain amount of randomization in there. And it's gonna do, because the last frame is the same as the first one, and we can verify that, so that's great. And then are we gonna be able to mess around with those? Let's test that out. So let's change this. Let's go to 1 3 1 3. No, it doesn't allow us now that we're going only 25 on the offset. We would need to go 100 on the offset, then we're gonna have really fast movement. But let's move that here. And so if we're willing on having more than 90, instead we can have 360 now frames, and bring this offset onto there and one back, so 359 is the last. And let's look at that. So it's gonna move around like that, and it's gonna not let me watch the, but now we do get the possibility, I mean, to mess around with those, which will make it a little bit nicer over our pattern that we had prior to that. And let's see, can we reduce the amount of segments now? Of course we can. Something like that. There's much less. Will it let me? So it's kind of going crazy, but it's kind of working. And as long as it goes from one to the other, it's still pretty fast. But pretty much more to experiment with this little way of setting things up with Trapcode Tao. So if you want to make something, just and you're thinking about it, well, just sit down and make it. Doesn't have to be like this, but there's many more ways you can use this principle. For example, if I were just to set this instead of repeat n-gons to repeat sphere, then I would get a nice little design like that with more sides, and that's something. And then we can add some fractal displacement on that, and that's something else, much more organic there. And sometimes by messing around with something, you get something else that's as interesting. And since we've set it up to loop, now this should loop as well, so it's one more layer of loop options that we could get in with the fractal displacement here with the seamless loop. But that's for another episode. That's enough for today. All right, it's been great, and if you have any questions, just leave it in comments, and I'll be happy to respond, and it's gonna be my pleasure. So as always, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.